Georgia, black man body slammed to the ground by cops. He's suing now for $700,000 for excessive force. Wait until you see this shocking video. Plus, I'll talk with former BET owner and billionaire Bob Johnson. He says black folks need a third independent political party. Really? Also, folks, black men talk about the power of the vote. That's a 2-hour special we're doing also with the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
A Georgia grand jury has indicted Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William Bryan on malice and felony murder charges in the February 23rd murder of Ahmaud Arbery. The indictment returned today formally charges each of the 3 defendants with 9 counts: malice murder, felony murder, 4 counts, aggravated assault, 2 counts, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. We certainly have been covering this story, and we'll give you the latest on exactly what happens in that case. It is not a shock there, of course, once the Georgia Bureau of Investigation got involved and then led the arrest of those 3. Joining me right now is A. Scott Bolden, former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee; Robert Patillo, executive director, Rainbow Push Coalition Peachtree Street Project; Lauren Victoria Burke, who writes for NNPA. Robert, I want to start with you there in Georgia. Again, this is a stark contrast to those first 3 district attorneys who pretty much sat on this case. This case has picked up steam since the GBI took it over.
Absolutely, and I think what was the most important was that video coming out. Once you started looking into the inconsistencies in the stories of the McMichaels, also the statements from the police officers who responded at the scene, stating that they wanted to arrest them at that time, but the district attorney would not allow them to. Once we found out the information about there being no string of break-ins, and also the testimony from the third co-defendant stating that after the shooting, Travis McMichael stood over the body and said a racial slur, effing N-word, to the dead body of Mr. Arbery. I think with that information being available, that there was no way this was coming back from a grand jury without an indictment. The next steps will be the preliminary hearing in Georgia, but because we have a statewide judicial emergency due to coronavirus, after the preliminary hearing, it's an unknown at this time what the timetable for trial will be.
This, of course, Scott, again, is an important case. Bottom line is, once you got it out of the hands of those local DAs who are very close to the McMichaels, you saw how justice should work.
Yeah, you certainly did, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is one of the best state investigation teams out there, based on my experience. The indictments were almost presumed, and now that you have them, but look for the defense of these individuals to try to move this case out of their county. It's being prosecuted by another county prosecutor, and so we'll have to stay vigilant. My colleague is right. We've got this emergency with COVID, and it looks like we're going to be looking at a second round. But at the same time, there's a lot of work to be done if the judiciary is down because of COVID. And look for the pressure to stay on to develop the tightest case, the best case, and a case whereby you can pick a fair and impartial jury and bring these convictions in the state of Georgia. So we'll have to stay tuned for it. But this wasn't really a lot of news. This was just confirmation news today.
And Lauren, this is exactly what happens when you have public pressure. When that video came to light, bottom line is that's what changed this entire story. And again, action should be taken against those particular police officers because those DAs, because their lack of action was shocking, stunning, and abomination.
Oh, it was absolutely ridiculous. As Robert already said, the video was everything. Without the video, we wouldn't be sitting here. Without the video, this would not have gone viral. Not known about it. News organizations would not have flooded in and repeated and replayed that video over and over again. So the video was absolutely everything.
Absolutely. And so we're seeing more and more of these cases where video plays a critical role in terms of us being able to see what happens. Speaking of that, let's talk about this video. Antonio Smith is suing the city of Valdosta in Georgia due to excessive force claims stemming from a February 8th incident involving the Valdosta Police Department. Watch this video.
About suspicious activity, man.
Suspicious activity? Where about?
They said, yeah, someone.
View that camera. I told them what I was doing.
Oasis Songs right here next to the
I told them what I was doing. I was waiting for my sister, the Western Union, me somebody. I always go there and get Western Union, and they know me.
Hey, you got your ID on you?
Yes, I got my ID. What are you guys doing?
We're out here investigating suspicious activity.
Well,
So,
I'm not doing anything. I've been around cameras, so I ain't been doing nothing.
all right. So what were you doing over there at the Walgreens?
Waiting for Western Union. Call my sister right now. She's in Florida. You have a cell phone? Call her. Don't
Call
talk to me
who?
like this. Call my sister in Florida. Don't do this. What are you doing? Oh my God! What are you doing?
Put your hands behind your back like you're told. Put your hands.
What are you doing? Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. Oh, please.
Put your hands.
Doing this thing. Oh my God. Jesus. Oh my God. You know this. Oh my God.
Stop.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he might be broke.
Oh Jesus. Oh my God. 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 Oh Jesus. Oh, it hurts. Oh my God.
Yeah, hold on.
Please, sir. Oh God.
Oh, this is wrong one. No, that's why I was trying to. No, because there's two different people. That's why I was trying to figure out if I had missed something. He told him to put his hands behind his back. Because they pointed this guy out too. The people at the store pointed him out also.
Don't move you on, okay? Don't move you on.
Okay, folks, when you see the rest of that video, you will actually see the officer who grabbed him from around his waist and body slammed him literally say, "What do you mean we got the wrong guy? Did you check his ID?" Scott, watching that whole video is crazy. And there was no need for the officer who walks up. What you do is you walk up, you listen to the other officer, you figure out what's going on. No, he immediately walks up, grabs the guy, put your hand behind your back, and then puts his arms around and body slams him, breaking the guy's wrist.
Unbelievable. That is a video that ought to be used for the textbook on what not to do in a de-escalation or no escalation situation. They were questioning. There were two people that have been pointed out. This officer that walked up did not confer with the other officers who were simply having a conversation with this gentleman. The gentleman gave him his sister, his ID, gave him his sister's information, and said, "Call my sister. I was waiting for Western Union. They know me." The gentleman that walked up didn't talk to anybody, didn't hear the conversation, then body slams him and puts cuffs on him, breaking his ribs. Are you kidding me? Why was any of that necessary?
Robert, when you
this was a nonviolent encounter, and he didn't even have any information.
Robert,
completely wrong.
Robert, you see the full video, they realize, oh shit, what did we just do? I mean, it's like all they quickly realize, and there's this look like, what? Okay, like what do we do? Guess what? You're on candid camera.
And, you know, they look like some little kids when they broke a toy trying to figure out what to tell their mother. Like, oh, God, we broke this one too bad. I think he's actually hurt. And I can't stand the fact that this is what second-class citizenship looks like. This is the good old-fashioned Nazi Germany, apartheid South Africa. Show me your papers. Where are you going? What are you doing? It doesn't matter that you're just an American citizen minding your own business, not accused of a crime, not in hot pursuit, not posing any violent threat. All this man was doing was walking down the street, and within minutes he's surrounded by 4 white police officers being body body slammed to the ground. And guess what? If that wrist was not broken, this would just go down as another police interaction. This probably wouldn't even gone into a police report because there will be no complaint, because so many people in our community are used to excessive force, are used to police brutality, and it's only now that we're starting to stand up and fight back against it.
But Robert, they have a right. They have a right to detain you, to investigate a crime. They do. What does body slamming him and putting him in handcuffs have to do with investigating and detaining him? Absolutely nothing.
Well, and in fact,
we're completely dead wrong here.
And in fact, Lauren, again, the guy goes, okay, there were two people here. This is where you simply do good policing. That is, check his ID. There's another guy, you check him, who they're talking about. But this is, Lauren, what black people keep talking about. Like, automatically, cops go from 0 to 100, and you go immediately to excessive force. And guess who really should be pissed off? If you're white in Valdosta, Georgia, Lauren, you should be mad as hell, because you're about to pay some serious money because of these idiotic cops.
Exactly. And what they'll do is obviously they'll have some sort of a payout. This is the reason why we need, I think, some national federal standards for police. As my nephew likes to say, who used to be a police officer in Virginia Beach, every cop is their own police precinct. I mean, everybody can just have their own standards. All these precincts can have their own, all these departments can have their own standards. And obviously, there's no set of standards one way or the other that would prevent stupidity. But at least you would have a certain baseline standard for this profession, which of course doesn't exist today. I don't know whether, I have to look at the video to see if this is true, but it looked like the guy that body slammed him was the sergeant, which would be even more frightening, of course, because he would be the highest ranking officer there.
And again, and not only that, this is a huge, not only that, this is a huge guy. And so not only are you body slamming him, all your weight is also going on top of this guy. Right. And it's like that dude was just waiting to body slam him. It was kind of like, all right, it's like Robert, he was like, I want to practice my wrestling move right now. I was watching the WWE and I want to practice it right now.
And this is what we mean by this lack of humanity, this lack of human decency, this second-class citizenship that many of us are under, because it's that exact mentality in law enforcement, that I don't need to talk to this person, I don't need to listen to them. First thing first, handcuff them, body slam them in a completely non-violent situation, and then we'll talk to them after that. The amount of abuse, the amount of literal and physical terrorism that is exhibited and experienced by African-American people in this country in jails and during police encounters, only the ones that are on video are the ones that we really pay attention and know about. But for years, for generations, African American men have been talking about these things. I think it's finally time to bring these to light and start doing real reforms that will help. We got to get rid of sovereign or qualified immunity. That officer needs to pay his bill himself. We got to go after his pension fund, go after his retirement, get his house, get his boat, get his kids' college fund, and then he'll think twice about body slamming people. So we need real systemic reforms.
All right, folks.
He's got qualified immunity.
Well, guess what?
That officer will protect himself in qualified immunity.
Well, that's why they're about to pay up as well. Folks, let's go to Milwaukee, where Michael Mattioli has been charged with first-degree reckless homicide in the death of 25-year-old Joe Acevedo. Mattioli, who was off duty at the time of the altercation, placed Acevedo in a fatal chokehold. A week later, Acevedo died of his injuries. Ben Crump joined the legal team in representing Joel Acevedo's family. Attorney Crump spoke at the rally that was held outside of the Milwaukee County Courthouse today. Here is what he said.
Before I say anything, Attorney Lamar, I want the people to join me in letting the world know why we are here today. And the reason, brothers and sisters, we are here today is because Joel life matters. 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 Because when Attorney Lamar called me, he said, Attorney Crump, this is very similar to the horrific killing of George Floyd. Yeah. And I said, well, do they have video? Attorney Lamar said, yeah, they have the video, but they won't release it. Because if they release it, we will see that this was just like the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so I am here to say to all the government officials who's supposed to be the advocates for justice, we don't need you to say anymore. All we need you to do is release the video. I understand now that Bernadette and Jose were right when they told me on the telephone that this is just like George Floyd, where Attorney Crump, they choked him even longer than they suffocated George Floyd.
Go to my iPad. Here's another case. I'm going to add this to this one here. This is a tweet. Alvin Cole, a black teenager, was shot 5 times while fleeing police earlier this year. He was the 3rd person to be killed by the same police officer in 5 years in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. Lauren, these 2 particular cases here, one of them a chokehold death. They keep saying release the video. There's a reason why police departments don't like releasing the video. But this is also why, and I'm not saying that they are somehow the panacea, this is why body cameras must be completely mandatory on every police officer in this country.
Yeah, obviously, when you see the video come out right away, you know that the police think that the video makes them look good. And you know when the video doesn't come out that the video is problematic. Not only does the body cameras need to be mandatory, but it needs to be an act of obstruction of justice if they're turned off or if they're, quote, broken. You know, we already saw the Chicago Police Department has perfected the fine art of always having the body camera off when something happens that turns out to be a police brutality incident. It's just amazing how that happens. But police really occupy, I think, under the law, a special class right now. They can sort of get away with almost anything, frankly. And I think that the anticipation moving forward is that they're going to have that power to do anything they want to anybody, anytime, any place. That's what their expectation is. That's what they're going to fight for. That's what they're going to lobby for. And that's exactly what we need to change.
Robert, this is, again, one of those cases. You have these police officers. In fact, that was one cop in, I forgot which city, who said, I don't care what they say. I am going to keep using a chokehold to save my life. You know what? And I think that person was a police union president. That person should be immediately taken off the streets.
Yes, I think what we have to think about is the fact that we still use medieval methods in policing. What other part of American life is actual physical violence part of the job? There is no law that you can break in America where the punishment is a chokehold. There is no law that you can break in America where the punishment is being beaten with a stick by a law enforcement officer. There's no punishment in America or no crime that you can commit where you get shot by a firing squad of officers prior to trial. So if the way that we are arresting people is fundamentally more violent and more destructive than the actual sentence that you get if you are convicted, then we are doing policing wrong. We have to be looking at 21st century methods of policing and not medieval methods.
Scott?
Yeah, you know, this training piece is really important because it seems like the police, the way they're processing their training, this cannot be correct, that in order to get you to comply, whether it's being arrested, handcuffs, resisting, running, or struggling with the police, that they're free to use deadly force. We know under Tennessee v. Garner from 1982, the Supreme Court has said it is illegal and unlawful, a violation of your Fourth Amendment right to shoot a nonviolent fleeing felon, let alone someone you think's committed a misdemeanor. But in every one of these videos you break down, you see the police ultimately using unnecessary force or deadly force just to get their command complied with. That can't be proper training. There's got to be some judgment. And again, I always ask you on this show, who's giving these people guns and badges and uniforms with the American flag on their shoulder? We got to stop that before you even get into retraining or community policing or better policing.
Absolutely. Speaking of policing, folks, Democrats today in the United States Senate blocked Senator Tim Scott's police reform bill. He was not too happy. This is what he said on the Senate floor.
Here's the truth. In Detroit, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, all these cities could have banned chokeholds themselves. They could have increased the police reporting themselves. They could have more data information themselves. They could have de-escalation training themselves. They could have duty to intervene themselves. Minneapolis as well. All these communities have been run by Democrats for decades. Decades. What is the ROI for the poorest people in this nation? And I don't blame them. I blame an elite political class with billions of dollars to do whatever they want to do, and look at the results for the poorest, most vulnerable people in our nation. I'm willing to compete for their vote. Are you?
Robert, did he somehow forget you have Georgia Republicans who are in control of the state legislature? You have the previous governor of Illinois was a Republican. Now you have a Democrat. I mean, we can go down the line, but does he also realize contracts, police contracts that happen, and then who do they typically endorse in races? See, this is why, to me, this whole police reform debate is a joke when you want to frame this as a Republican or versus a Democrat deal. No, this is a state of mind in America where we're going to protect police at all costs, regardless of party.
You're correct. And what I do think we have to do is fight this on a multilateral level. If there's anything to take from what Tim Scott said, is that, look, on your local level, instead of worrying about what's going on in Washington, D.C., what can you do to get your police department, to get your mayor, to get your city council, your county commission, your alderman? What can you do to get those people who are closest to you electorally to change the law, to change the rules, to change the regulations? We saw in Chicago, which is a heavily Democratic city, when Laquan McDonald was killed, we saw the exact same Jim Crow tactics from the police department that you will see in the darkest part of Mississippi. So let's work on making changes on the local level, and we'll let the national parties work themselves out. But there are things you can do to the city, persuade the city council person who lives on your block to make changes that will benefit yourself and your community.
But here's the deal. Hold on. Here's the deal, Lauren, that what you're dealing with here. Democrats blocked it because they said, one, you had absolutely no discussion among the Senate Judiciary Committee. You didn't have any debate. You didn't have where typically these bills are worked out in committee. Republicans then complain, well, no, why won't you allow debate on the floor? So essentially what they wanted the Democrats to do was to vote on cloture to allow it to move forward and then have a debate. But Democrats are saying, why in the hell will we do that? Because once we get it past cloture, we got no control, Lauren, what happens after that. Their leverage is in this vote.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, let's be real. The Republicans are not serious about this issue. Their position effectively is that the police should be able to do whatever they want to whomever they want. The constituencies that Republicans generally represent are not disproportionately impacted by the mistakes that police make. I'm not saying the Democratic Party has been great at figuring that out, because they haven't. I mean, we sat there and stopped for us 12 years, and Hillary Clinton and Schumer said absolutely nothing about that. Obvious Fourth Amendment violation. But at the same time, you know, this irritating, annoying talking point that Tim Scott brought out with regard to state, do things to people who are disadvantaged. I mean, come on, man. Really? South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. He doesn't really want to play that game. And the other problem is that Tim Scott, I mean, at some point you got to get real with reality and yourself, regardless of party. And Tim Scott's always going to be caught in this vortex because he understands that racism exists. He understands that there's got to be something that changes, but his party is completely against that. He's trying to thread this needle of being friends with his party and getting something real done on policing, and then looking at these videos come out week after week, year after year, decade after decade. You cannot thread that needle. At some point, you have to admit what is true. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to play this game.
Scott, here's a tweet from Chuck Grassley. Go to my iPad. Democrats block opening debate on police reform, preventing chance to offer amendments and publicly negotiate. Senator Tim Scott offered to work with Dems on amendments they say they want, but they said no. Now they demand to negotiate behind closed doors, not how Senate should work. What the hell is he talking about? This is a dude who is the Senate Judiciary Committee chair. That's exactly how it works. Not only that, this whole deal of like, no, we should debate in public. Are you serious? It's like, stop. You're not fooling anybody. Negotiations in the Senate aren't all on C-SPAN. But guess what? As Senator Kamala Harris said, the Senate Judiciary Committee, that's a public hearing. It's public. No, but they don't want it actually there. And so my deal is this here. If you're actually serious about a bill, why wouldn't you say, let's negotiate it back and forth and then put it on the floor?
Well, because they know that negotiation is going to be a problem for them. They know a public and private negotiation, because that bill doesn't go far enough. It doesn't fix the problem. It puts a Band-Aid over it. It doesn't eliminate qualified immunity. It doesn't change the standard from reasonable force to necessary force. It doesn't go as far as the Democratic version in the House, and that's where you really want to confront the problem. The Republicans aren't serious about this. They know they're politically in trouble. They need those police unions. So it's just not going to work. And when you start the debate that it's Democratic liberals and elitists that are the problem in urban cities, even if though you're in a red state, you're not going to move the ball forward, because it's not a red problem or a blue problem, a black problem or a white problem. It's a blue problem. It's a humanity problem that has to stop. And if you talk about it in human terms, you can get to fixing this. If you talk about it in political terms, you're going to only get a political stalemate, and all black lives don't matter. Any life doesn't matter when you're putting us at risk of the police, and we're always put at risk when the police engage us as black men and black women. And that's the problem.
All right, folks, let's talk about last night, what took place in the election front. It is too close to call in Kentucky. They're still counting the ballots in the race for the Democratic nomination for the Senate between Amy McGrath and Charles Booker. Again, right now, Booker is down. Of course, he sued, trying to keep the polls open. There was one injunction. They kept them open until 6:30, but of course, many his supporters believe that having only 200 polling locations in the entire state actually hurt him. But the big thing that we saw yesterday took place in New York, where long-term Democrat Eliot Engel bounced, crushed by an African-American, Jamil Bowman. We had him on the show, just crushed. Engel got the support of the Congressional Black Caucus Political Action Committee, but it reminds me of the race with Ayanna Pressley when she ran against a long-term incumbent, another white male. She beat him, and the CBC PAC actually backed that incumbent. Also, we see in other races as well, where you have another African-American who won a race, Mondrian Jones. We also have Richie Torres, who is leading in that particular race over Mike Blake, an African-American. Some 40,000 ballots are still outstanding, and so a lot of different things happening there. We also, of course, in Virginia, Dr. Webb, we had him on the show. He blew away with the Democratic nomination. Democrats could pick up that seat right there. Robert, you talk about, again, a strong showing last night. And it's very interesting. People keep saying, oh, my God, progressives are dominating. But the reality is here. It depends on the race that you're running in, where you have some races where Democrats are winning. They are centrist. There's some where you have people who are progressive. That's what you're seeing here. But it's also people who know how to run these local these congressional races are local. That's what they are. Engel got nailed by his opponent by saying, dude, how can you represent a district in New York when you've actually lived in Virginia for 27 years? That was the exact same argument AOC used against Joe Crowley when she beat him.
You're absolutely correct. And one of the big things I think what we're seeing is that as the party bosses in the states lose power, what we saw for years were complicated primary systems inside baseball. State and local parties keep African-American candidates out of races that they have the opportunity to win. Now that those systems are starting to break apart within Democratic primaries and state parties, we're seeing more people open up, and we're actually seeing a reflection what the people of those districts want instead of what the party bosses want. It was less than 10 years ago, and right here in Georgia, where it was nearly impossible for a black person to run for statewide office without the endorsement of somebody from South Georgia, somebody from Dublin or Oglethorpe, somewhere like that. We're finally seeing these things open up, and I think it's good for our democracy to have the actual voices of the people heard.
But it's not just that. It's not just that, Scott. Last night, it's a 24-year-old candidate, who Republican, who was running to take the seat, Mark Meadows in North Carolina. He had his hand-picked person. In fact, what he did was he resigned at the last second to allow this woman, the only person to actually jump in the race, block others out. She got crushed by him last night, and Donald Trump backed the establishment candidate. This 24-year-old kid beat them all, blew them away.
Yeah, different dynamic. This was a young kid. He was physically challenged from an accident, very telegenic, and did not have Trump support, was a Trump supporter, but ran on conservative, traditional views and issues on his agenda. And the voters there said they wanted change. That's interesting to watch because they rejected Trump. They've rejected Trump before, but he's being trounced in the polls over COVID and criminal justice reform, or COVID and the racial justice issues that he won't respond to. On the Democratic side, something really is happening with Justice Democrats. That's the organization that backed AOC. That's the organization that backed this other gentleman in New York that beat Ingo. They're not only raising money, they pick issues, exploit that issue in the Democratic primary to the opposition in the primary, and then they organize voters and organize the community behind them, whereby they figured out how to win these local races. You see AOC, you see Ingo getting beat. You're going to see that in other parts of the country where they're heavily Democratic centers, that they can exploit the incumbency that's been there for 10, 20, 30 years and gotten comfortable with leadership, but forgotten to be with the people and get organized and campaign in these local elections. We're going to see more of this, I think, because America and these communities are ready for change, and AOC and Justice Democrats provide that change and make them believe again.
Lauren, this is real simple. Nobody's guaranteed to a seat. If you want, look, if you want to maintain your seat, you got to run. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, almost got beat 2 years ago. Look, guess what? She worked it last night. She dispatched the people who are running against her. This is what happens. This whole idea, if you're a Democrat or Republican, oh my God, Ingo was personally offended that he actually had competition. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. Let me be real clear, y'all. I don't care who you are. All House seats are up every 2 years. Of the 435 members of the House, nobody is guaranteed a seat. You must run, Lauren.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fairly obvious. I mean, Carolyn Maloney is the other one that's out there that we still don't know the result. I do think it matters.
She's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah. It matters who exactly we're talking about. And in the case of New York, where we are, it's very, very much easier in New York for a progressive candidate to win and challenge a long-term incumbent. In the case of Joe Crowley and Eliot Engel, that was just really easy. Eliot Engel, he had as his legal address Potomac, Maryland. He just can't get away with that. And
that's kind of stupid.
Who let that happen?
That's kind of stupid. All I'm saying is this here: people get offended. People get offended. They get offended, Lauren, when people are running. I'm sorry, you got to run, okay? And guess what? If you get challenged, state your record, go out there and you beat them, or you might lose, but you still have to run.
Right. Right.
I just
you're 20 points down.
I just don't get this whole how dare you run against me?
Well, I think for the Watergate class, which Eliot Engel is probably from the Watergate class, that there's sort of this idea that you came in because of fairly good reasons, obviously Richard Nixon. But the older members, there's always been sort of an understood, I don't want to say agreement. It's sort of an understood thing in their head that I'm the incumbent and so I'm here. But we live in a political world that's completely different, obviously, from the 1970s. So AOC coming in, now Jamal Bowman. I mean, they are. To me, those were fairly easy races because the people that they beat had just completely checked out of the district.
Got it.
And in the case of Yvette Clarke, of course, that didn't happen because she's there and her mother has a legacy, and it's the seat of Shirley Chisholm. It's a little bit easier to hang on to, but it is a seat thing that you don't see very often at all.
Bottom line is, incumbents, you aren't guaranteed seats. All right, folks, let's talk about this. I'm going to deal with this one issue here that we have been seeing. Over the weekend, protesters brought down 2 Confederate statues on the grounds of the North Carolina Capitol building in downtown Raleigh. Well, as a result, Governor Roy Cooper ordered the rest of the Confederate statues at the Capitol removed. Well, this week, the state legislature, Republicans put a pause on discussions of funding monuments to African Americans on the Capitol grounds and another block downtown. Now, this is a week after $4 million in funding for the proposed monuments passed the Senate easily in a surprise vote. The money was set to be discussed in a House committee, but was pulled from the agenda. We're seeing this all around the country. We saw a statue of John Calhoun coming down in South Carolina. We saw what happened in the nation's capital. We're seeing this all around the country, where Americans are confronting the images of white supremacy. You have Donald Trump, who wants to protect these monuments on federal grounds, saying, put those folks in jail and give them long prison time. Isn't it amazing how hyped he is about defending Confederate statues? You have the Confederate flag battle still ongoing in Mississippi, where Governor Tate Reeves does not want to really move on that as well. We're seeing this happen, and now we're seeing these Republicans and conservatives just so upset and angry. And how dare y'all do this to the statues? But the reality is this: they were domestic terrorists. They were white domestic terrorists, and they lost. Please, I want to see any Republican or conservative or Democrat stand up and defend any city in America putting up a monument to any of the 9/11 hijackers. Or how about to any of the people who stormed the embassy in Tehran in 1979? How about putting up a monument to Muammar Gaddafi, Libya, responsible for shooting down an airliner? Put that up at a nearby airport. See, that's the same. But for these people who somehow don't understand, African Americans are not trying to salute statues and flags of people who wanted to keep us enslaved. I don't understand why folks find this hard to comprehend. Could it be that you have folks who think like the woman in Virginia, the state legislator, who actually said they're getting rid of white culture? Could that be the problem? That we have now defined the Confederacy as white culture? It's time for some folks to get a grip, and those statues must come down. Real quick thoughts from our panel on the action in North Carolina, suspending the funding for black statues because these other statues came down. Start with you, Scott, Lauren, then end with Robert. Scott, go ahead.
Well, they're teeing it up so that they can negotiate to keep some of these statutes and to release the $4 million, which is the wrong-headed way to negotiate this because of the white culture. I think you hit it on the head. But the pressure has to stay on. That money's been allocated, and they're going to have to release it at some point. At least I hope so. But look for them to want to compromise on some of these Confederate statutes who were losers and domestic terrorists.
Lauren.
Yeah. They're making this argument that makes no sense, that it's sort of us versus them, white versus black. You take my statue down, I take your statue down, instead of looking at the actual individual who's been represented in the statue and what they represented when they were living. That's a conversation they don't want to have, and a conversation they would surely lose. So it's sad, it's a sad and pathetic argument to make.
Robert?
It's really interesting to me, the fact that we still live in a country where white supremacy is so entrenched, so fundamental to the fabric of the country, that people think any attack on white supremacy is an attack on America. That if you have any criticism of white supremacy, you therefore somehow don't understand or know or appreciate your history. We have to break that causal connection.
All right, folks. Panel, I appreciate it. Scott, Lauren, Robert. Coming up next, folks, Bob Johnson, founder of BET, joins us. He says black folks should start a political third party. Okay. We'll discuss next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, so a lot of y'all are always asking me about some of the pocket squares that I wear. Now, Robert don't have one on. Now, I don't particularly like the white pocket squares. I don't like even the silk ones. And so I was reading GQ magazine a number of years ago, and I saw this guy who had this pocket square here, and it looks like a flower. This is called a shibori pocket square. This is how the Japanese manipulate the fabric to create this sort of flower effect. So I'm going to take it out and then place it in my hand so you see what it looks like. And I said, man, this is pretty cool. And so I tracked down, it took me a year to find a company that did it. And so they make these about 47 different colors. And so I love them because, again, as men, we don't have many accessories to wear. So we don't have many options. And so this is really a pretty cool pocket square. Now, what I love about this here is you saw when it's in the pocket, you know, it gives you that flower effect like that. But if I wanted to also, unlike other, because if I flip it and turn it over, it actually gives me a different type of texture. And so therefore it gives me a different look. So there you go. So if you actually want to get one of these shibori pocket squares, we have them in 47 different colors. All you got to do is go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So it's RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All you got to do is go to my website and you can actually get this. Now, for those of you who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club, there's a discount for you to get our pocket squares. That's why you also got to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. And so that's what we want you to do. And so it's pretty cool. So if you want to jazz your look up, you can do that. In addition, y'all see me with some of the feather pocket squares. My sister, who's a designer, she actually makes these. They're all custom made. So when you also go to the website, you can also order one of the customized feather pocket squares right there at RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So please do so. And of course, it goes to support the show. And again, if you're a Bring the Funk fan club member, you get a discount. This is why you should join the fan club. All right, folks. We're set. We had connection with Bob Johnson, and so for some reason lost connection. So we're trying to reach him back. So trying to figure out what's going on. Guys, let me know in the control room if we got Bob back. Okay. Do we have? Sorry, what did he say? He's not available. Okay, all right. So he said that he was supposed to be on at 6:30, and it wasn't available. But I know when we reached out, I was monitoring this whole deal. We finished that one conversation, and so once I got the notice, so okay. So here's the deal. Okay, so Bob Johnson was on. So I mean, tell Bob to call back. Tell Bob to call back. We had the connection, and so tell Bob I'm ready to talk to him. He's no longer available tonight. Okay, because he said we're supposed to interview him at 6:30, and we didn't go to him precisely at 6:30. Bob ran a network. Bob know how television goes. Okay, all right, so let me find this video. Okay, so Bob Johnson was on CNBC. He was on CNBC. And he said that black people should be forming a independent party. Okay, so what I was going to ask Bob is, it's June of 2020. Why is Bob saying this right now? I don't understand why Bob is saying in June 2020 why black people should be forming an independent party. But when I thought about it, I went back to December 2nd when I interviewed Bob on TV One, December 2nd, 2016, after Donald Trump won. This is what Bob Johnson said then. meeting I'm talking about, I mean, it's real. That needs to happen.
That meeting, I will go to that meeting if somebody calls the meeting together.
What if you call it?
I would call meeting if the meeting flies under the banner of what Bill Clinton said.
No, that's fine. Okay, here's the deal.
You and I will call it.
Okay.
You and I will call it.
Okay, let's call a meeting. And we'll figure out. We can have it at, like I say, like when they meet, it's on a weekend. Look, X number of people come here for that particular weekend, which lays the path, because we have to fund our own grassroots. We can't wait every election for the candidate or the party. Can you please fund it? We have to drive our vote.
But we first have to have a philosophy and an ideology behind the fundraising. I don't want to raise, I raise money a lot of times,
yes,
but I have an ideology. I want to make more money. So I understand how to raise money. That's not the issue. For here, I want to have an ideology behind why are we raising this money. When I call a donor and say, hey, come to this meeting and we're asking everybody to put up, whatever you can based on whatever you can give.
Right.
To raise well, you call it a PAC, for instance. But what is the philosophy of this PAC? If they say this PAC is no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, just permanent interest, I'm with that.
All right, so here's what we'll do. So you and I will call that. We'll talk. We'll figure out date, meeting place, and we'll do that.
Okay, I'm with it, because I believe this is essential to African Americans' future in this divided nation.
No, I agree. So, okay. So here's the issue that I have. And again, I wish Bob was on. I would tell him, and we're going to try to book Bob on the show tomorrow. I called Bob's people to actually set that up. It never happened. So I don't understand. You say that 4 years ago and nothing happens in 4 years, and now all of a sudden you're saying it. I just got an alert where Bob also, I guess, gave an interview with Fox News that says BET founder mocks crowds tearing down statues, calls them borderline anarchists in the Fox News interview. So I don't, again, let me be real clear. This is the thing that I think I think it's real easy to say that, oh, we need to have this. Who funds it? Who organizes it? Y'all just saw. I say it. Let's call a meeting. I reached out to his people about that, never heard back. So, I'm just saying. To me, you make this comment now in June. I've already had some other people who are like, I don't understand. I don't understand the call. I really don't. I don't understand the call. I don't understand the timing. I don't, I'm just trying to understand it. I have folks on YouTube who are saying, Bob is a big Trump supporter. He's talked about the Trump economy and how it's been good for African American stuff along those lines. But that's the piece there. I mean, because let me just help folks out, because I get this. People say this a lot. We need our own party. First of all, if you look back, the last successful third party was the Reform Party. It was funded by Ross Perot. When Ross Perot ran in 1992, the Reform Party was born out of that. And it was disaffected Republicans and disaffected Democrats who formed the Reform Party. There were people who felt that Ross Perot had too much control over the Reform Party. Jesse Ventura became governor of Minnesota as a Reform Party candidate. Now, people don't understand. There are other parties out there. In fact, the Libertarian Party. Let me just do this here. And in fact, if you study people, in New York State, there are multiple political parties in New York State that actually have a line on the ballot. See, when we go in and vote, it lists all people who are running for president. There's this belief that it's only 2 or 3 people. No, there are tons of people who run for president who actually qualify for the ballot. In fact, let me see, how many this is just Google. How many parties are on the ballot in 50 states? Okay, this was what Ballotpedia says. List of political parties in the United States. So they actually have this list on there. Now, here's the deal. This is as of September 2019. Go to my iPad. So, it says 3 minor parties were recognized in more than 10 states as of September 2019. Libertarian Party, 37 states. The Green Party, 26 states. The Constitution Party, 14 states. Although there are dozens of political parties in the United States, only certain parties qualify to have the names of their candidates for office printed on election ballots. In order to qualify for ballot placement, a party must meet certain requirements that vary from state to state. For example, in some states, a party must organize around a candidate for a specific office. That candidate must in turn win a percentage of the vote in order for the party to be granted ballot status. In still other states, an aspiring political party must register a certain number of voters. Okay, so let me unpack that, okay, for the people out there what that means. See, so it's real easy to say, we need our own party. But there's no guarantee you're going to be in all 50 states. So really, I think when you listen to what Bob Johnson said, is that do you need an entity that is advancing black interests? Well, we have various groups. Poor People's Campaign doing that. NAACP, National Urban League, other civil rights groups, those things are all there. I just think that when we start saying stuff like we need our own party, we might want to know exactly what the hell that means. Because it's not as simple as people think. Now, what I argued when Bob was with me in 2016 is that I believe we as African Americans need to have a significant funding apparatus whose sole job is to drive black voter turnout when it comes to elections. Now, Diddy, when he made his announcement, he's working on this entity that we're going to hold our votes hostage. Y'all saw my video on this show where I describe that there has to be an entity that exists 365 days a year that serves not just demanding something of a candidate, but then following up to that particular initiative. So if that's what Bob's talking about, okay. But are you going to fund it? Are you going to contribute $5 to $10 million to that entity? Are other African Americans going to do it? Now, there's a thing called the Black Economic Alliance, a group of well-to-do African Americans who wanted to use their dollars to influence public policy. They actually exist. They've had forums. They had a forum that actually aired on BET in June. They've run commercials. They exist. That's an entity. So I want us to understand that there are entities out there who are already doing what Bob is talking about. But when you start saying we need our own political party, y'all, that sounds really great. It's a great statement, but that sucker ain't easy. It ain't easy at all. And I just want us to understand the reality behind it. So we're gonna reschedule. Bob, and so bottom line is here. We'll get him on. He can't come on tomorrow, but we'll reschedule him, and then we'll make it happen. So coming up next, folks, we're going to talk about the power of the vote for the perspective of black men in partnership with the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. That's coming up next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, so a lot of y'all are always asking me about some of the pocket squares that I wear. Now, Robert don't have one on. Now, I don't particularly like the white pocket squares. I don't like even the silk ones. And so I was reading GQ magazine a number of years ago, and I saw this guy who had this pocket square here, and it looks like a flower. This is called a shibori pocket square. This is how the Japanese manipulate the fabric to create this sort of flower effect. So I'm going to take it out and then place it in my hand so you see what it looks like. And I said, man, this is pretty cool. And so I tracked down, it took me a year to find a company that did it. And so they make these about 47 different colors. And so I love them because, again, as men, we don't have many accessories to wear, so we don't have many options. And so this is really a pretty cool pocket square. Now, what I love about this here is you saw when it's in the pocket, you know, it gives you that flower effect like that. But if I wanted to also, unlike other, because if I flip it and turn it over, it actually gives me a different type of texture. And so therefore it gives me a different look. So there you go. So if you actually want to get one of these shibori pocket squares, we have them in 47 different colors. All you got to do is go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So it's RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All you got to do is go to my website and you can actually get this. Now, for those of you who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club, there's a discount for you to get our pocket squares. That's why you also got to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. And so that's what we want you to do. And so it's pretty cool. So if you want to jazz your look up, you can do that. In addition, y'all see me with some of the feather pocket squares. My sister, who's a designer, she actually makes these. They're all custom made. So when you also go to the website, you can also order one of the customized feather pocket squares right there at RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So please do so. And of course, it goes to support the show. And again, if you're a Bring the Funk fan club member, you get a discount. This is why you should join the fan club. Participation. They, of course, have their town hall with young activists, specifically black men. In just a second, we're going to join them. I'll be moderating this conversation. The folks are going to be on the panel. Just pull up the graphic. Just kill the audio, please. Jared Sawyer, he is the Black Youth Vote Georgia coordinator with the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Sean Dove is Chief Executive Officer for Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Diallo Brooks is a board member, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and Director of Outreach Partner Engagement for People for the American Way. Reverend Tony Lee is a board member of the coalition, also pastor Community Hope Church, Temple Hills, Maryland. Dwayne Crawford is an advisory board member, executive director of National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Sean Preston, state coordinator, Michigan Black Youth Vote. Tony Lewis Jr., author and activist, and my son, of course, New York General Raptivist, co-founder Until Freedom. And so we're going to go. All right, folks, let me know when we have them ready to go live. So they have so they have the DJ playing right now. And so, yes, Henry, really. All right, so what they got a DJ going, so that's where we saw. I've introduced all the panel there, and of course, we talk about the impact of Black Lives Matter movement in the lives of black men and boys. So when ready to go, folks, let me know.